Me and my wife were showing each other some love. I had already made her feel really good twice, and now we were both getting closer to that moment of pure bliss. We were just laying there, happy as can be. When she opened her eyes, I gave her a sweet kiss and held her close. As we started to come back to reality, we thought about all the things that led us to that moment. Stephanie, my wife, and her friends Chuck and Beverly Conrad came to our monthly get-together last Friday. After dinner at Legal Seafoods, we went to Phoenix to grab some drinks and hit the dance floor. After our first cocktail, we were having a blast dancing before heading back to our table for another drink. That's when James Wilson, the new quarterback for the Patriots, showed up at the club with his crew. The vibe instantly got more hype as they snagged a table on the other side of the club. Then, out of nowhere, Brianna Brown, a local host and former Miss Massachusetts and Miss America finalist, walked in looking stunning. It was clear she was making some moves in there. So we were all chilling at Bev's gang spot by the DJ booth, right? And Bev was totally eyeing Wilson, damn, she was ready for him to throw those boots under her bed anytime. Stephanie was getting all worked up about something, so I had to lighten the mood. I was like, hey ladies, remember we're all married here. I was just messing around, Steve, chill out. Bev was like, yeah, it's not gonna happen anyway. Then Chuck had to go and bring up the D word, talking about how it could end in divorce if Brian ended up with one of us. Chuck, seriously, it's just a one-time thing, relax. Stephanie was like, what's the harm, guys? Let's chill out. I jumped in and said, we're just having a good time. Then Steve Beverly joined in and said, let's keep enjoying the evening. Beverly mentioned that he was coming over, and the conversation went back to normal topics. He's coming here, she explained. I started asking who, then looked over my shoulder and saw Wilson heading our way. He was stopping at each table to sign autographs or take selfies. Finally, he reached our table and said, excuse me, do you mind if I? Hey, tell your hot wife to come dance with me. I mean, I appreciated that he asked me first, but I was gonna say no until I saw Stephanie nodding her head like crazy. So, I gave a little nod too. And when he turned around, Stephanie was already on her feet, grabbing his hand and dragging him to the dance floor. I gotta admit, they looked pretty good together. But when the music slowed down and she melted into his arms, I felt my blood boiling. Just as I was about to stand up and do something about it, a soft hand landed on my shoulder and a beautiful voice asked, hey, can I ask you out? I was just standing there, probably looking like a total idiot, staring into the most beautiful blue eyes I've ever seen. They belonged to Brianna Brown. I felt like I was in a trance as I got up and followed her onto the dance floor. The slow song was still playing as she wrapped her arms around my neck, pressing her amazing chest against mine. I awkwardly put my hands on her waist, but she moved back, almost like a perfect fifth position. Sorry, I don't want to seem ungrateful, but why me? There must be like a dozen other guys who are. Yo, I'm not as close to your leader as she is. Her laugh was dope and her eyes were shining like no other. She mentioned she saw what went down with your wife and Wilson, and she must have noticed my confused face. I get where you're coming from. I've seen this kind of thing before, and it usually doesn't turn out well. What are you trying to say? I don't get it. Almost every night she dips out with him, leaving Herman all by himself feeling embarrassed. Sometimes she comes back, but it's rare. I hope I can help your wife make the right choice. But wait, who are you? She gave me a look, then walked away, but not before I saw another tear in her eye. This is a long story, maybe I'll fill you in later, depending on how the night goes. I'm Brian. I think I know you. I'm Steve Smith, she raised an eyebrow at me. Yeah, Smith. I know, it sounds fancy for no reason. Why not just Smith, right? My folks are from England and wanted to keep a bit of a connection to their roots. When the song ended, I took her to the table and thanked her. Stephanie was already back at our table when I finished dancing. There were people giving me dirty looks, like I was the prodigal son returning. She asked me if I had a good time dancing with that gorgeous girl. I said sorry, but why is dancing with Brian worse than your dance with Wilson? And isn't it Brianna, not Brian? I think you called him Mr. Wilson, she blushed. I replied, well, you were singing when I sat down, so we started talking to Chuck and Beverly. But man, the tension was thick. Stephanie suddenly had to go to the bathroom. A little while later, Beverly didn't come with her as planned. She said she needed to grab something from the wardrobe and left the club. Beverly showed up a few minutes later, but Stephanie was nowhere to be found. I had to go look for her. Beverly seemed worried but didn't say anything. When I went to the restroom, I bumped into Brianna at her table. She stood up and stopped me, putting a hand on my chest. "Thanks, Brianna. I gotta go find Stephanie. I don't think she's here." Steve and Wilson went to the bathroom at the same time, but neither of them saw her. "Hey, come back with me. I'll search the ladies' room and you can check the men's, but I don't think we'll find them there." She was right. When I got back to my table, I had a weird feeling. Chuck seemed relieved when he saw Brianna, but Beverly looked even more concerned than before. I told Beverly, "Stephanie seems to have left the building. Do you know anything about this?" Chuck tried to stop staring at Brianna and turned to Beverly. "Beverly," he said. "What have you done?" I bought the..." "Hey," I grabbed Stephanie's coat and dropped it off at the front door. "How did you know she needed it?" I could tell by the way she was looking at me, she needed it to go with Wilson. If I hadn't already spent, I would have jumped out of my chair. "Did you think this was a good idea? This might be her only chance to meet a real celebrity, you know. Opportunities like this don't come around often. Do you want to be a legit celebrity? Come on, Steve, it's not that big of a deal. I guess you're not going with Brian, Stefan." He laughed and said, "I'm not too sure." Brianna replied, "I totally forgot she was here. Come on, Steve, let's get out of here." She grabbed my hand as we approached the exit. We got her coats and as they helped her put them on, I thanked them for the ego boost. "I think I'll go home to my empty house and prepare for the end of my marriage." "Why do you think this was just a boost to my ego? Let's take your car. Why should Stephanie be the only one to have this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity?" I looked at her, expecting to. "Did you hear anything?" Got it, but instead I saw a warm, brilliant smile. What the hell? I figured I didn't have any other choices at the moment, so we put our arms around each other's waists and walked to the garage and got into my car. "Where's Meaty?" I asked, and she directed me to a fancy apartment building. The garage attendant was about to turn me away when he saw Brian signaling for me to come in. Brianna showed me where to park and we took the elevator to her apartment. I was amazed by her awesome place, especially the living room. The apartment had big windows with a view of the city. Brian casually tossed his coat on a chair, and I did the same. "You want a drink?" Brian asked me. "I'll have what you're having," I replied. She poured us both white wine and we sat on the couch. She patted the seat next to her, and we sat down. She turned on some music with a remote, and we sat in silence, sipping our wine. I wondered what her plan was. Did she really think we would? Yo, if we were to sleep together, can I just say I had no illusions about what Stephanie might do if she hadn't already. But I believed in my wedding vows. The only problem was Stephanie didn't seem to feel the same way about marriage vows. Can I break them? Beverly said this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, can I really give it up? Brianna seemed to be trying to make the decision for me as she snuggled against my shoulder and wrapped her arms around me. I was just sitting there, trying to figure out what to do. Rihanna gave me a sexy ring because she got tired of me being indecisive. She got up, pulled me up, and started dancing with me. There was no room for shyness that day. She put my hands right below her waist and I realized that resistance was futile, so I just went with it and figured I'd deal with the consequences later. I didn't wait for her to make a move, I just went for it. As she tried to say something, I grabbed her face and kissed her. I'm not sure what happened next. Man, I don't even know how long we were going at it, kissing like that. But when we finally stopped, we were both gasping for air. Her face was all red, and I'm pretty sure mine was too. She led me into her bedroom, and I could hear some sweet tunes playing as she sat me down on her bed. Next thing I know, she's unbuttoning her blouse and I'm doing the same, like I was in a trance. I barely had my shirt off when she stripped down, showing off her amazing chest. I'm not really into bra sizes, but damn, her boobs looked good on her. She slowly undressed, teasing me and getting me all worked up. Then she helped me get naked and started caressing me. Once I whipped out my manhood from my pants, I knew I wouldn't last long. The pressure started building up quickly. "I think I'm gonna finish soon," I told her. But she just smiled at me. And that's when I hit the jackpot. I grabbed her hand, gave her a passionate kiss, and she kissed me back. She motioned for me to take my turn and sit on the edge of the bed. I don't mean to brag, but I'm pretty good at satisfying women. I showed her all my skills. I used all my skills and gave it my all, and soon she was squirming in pleasure. We were loving every moment of it, feeling like we were in a movie or something. It was nothing like Stephanie, if I may say so. "Brianna, you promised to tell me why you wanted to help us out," I asked, but she just turned away, tears in her eyes. About 5 years back, I was working in a tiny TV studio, just starting out. I was married to a guy who resembled you, always backing me up and pushing boundaries when needed. We had to move because of a job opportunity. We were at a charity event when the boss of the studio asked me to dance without even asking my husband. So, I took his hand and left my husband sitting there, not caring about his anger. I pushed it to the back of my mind as Chuck led me away. His real name was Charles, but he preferred to go by Chuck to seem more down to earth. He didn't think highly of people he considered beneath him. I can't say he used any amazing seduction tactics on me, but he definitely got my attention. He made some low-key moves and some more obvious hints that he could help boost my career. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of leaving the club with him without even glancing back at my husband. I later found out that my husband put on a brave face but was actually devastated. I wish I could say that the night was incredible or that my career skyrocketed, but in reality, it was the complete opposite. The intimate encounter was disappointing, to say the least. He seemed to think that just being with him was a treat, but the rumors about our affair caused problems. He was a big shot, so the drama surrounding us was unavoidable. I got fired, but at least they gave me enough money to keep me quiet. It sucked for a while, but I bounced back. It hurts to think about my ex, though. I found out he got remarried and has kids, something we used to dream about. She couldn't handle it anymore, so I comforted her while trying not to cry. I remembered the conversations Stephanie and I had about our future kids, wondering if we would ever have them. Brianna had fallen asleep, so I tucked her in and cuddled her. So, I wake up to find myself alone in bed, but I smell bacon cooking in the kitchen. I get up, go to the bathroom, then head to the kitchen where I find Brian wearing a long t-shirt with her butt peeking out. She gives me a grin and tells me the coffee is ready, pointing to the pot in the corner. I pour myself a cup, take a sip, and then she serves me a plate of bacon and eggs. We eat in silence until I finally bring up the awkward topic. "So, where do we go from here?" For a moment, she seemed lost in thought. Then she finally spoke, breaking the silence. "You and Stephanie need to decide where to go next. Can any of you handle what happened last night? What about us?" She chuckled, not without a hint of malice. "Steve, there is no us right now. We had a good time last night, but we barely know each other. You're married, unless you or Stephanie decide otherwise. If you can't figure it out, maybe we can meet up and see if there's more than just a physical attraction. Just a heads up. Listen, I gotta be real with you, my job comes first for me right now. If I find a better opportunity, I might have to move away. Are you cool with that, or are we gonna try to make a long-distance thing work? Also, just so you know, people are gonna talk when they see us together. But if we do end up being a thing, it's just gonna be rumors. You gotta be ready to handle that. Go back to your wife and figure out if there's anything worth saving in your marriage. Here's my card, let me know what you decide." Go words spoken as she hugged me, kissed me tenderly on the lips, and sent me on my way. I arrived home right as Wilson was dropping Stephanie off. He gave me a tiny smirk as he drove out of the driveway. Stephanie and I stepped up to the door simultaneously. I opened the door and she ran by me, sending off the scent of fresh shampoo and soap. I followed her, closing the door behind me. "Where have you been?" she asked defiantly. Is she asking me about this? I reflected on what she did. I was with Brenda. I almost broke into laughter. Yeah, as if. You were probably hiding out in some crappy motel, licking your wounds. She drove me crazy, no lie. Ask Chuck and Beverly, they saw it all. They even asked me to dance. Then we left together. She probably felt sorry for you and put on a show so you wouldn't look like a total loser. She probably ditched you as soon as you left the club. Things weren't going the way I wanted. I thought we could at least try to move past what happened, but the lack of respect for me made that seem impossible. I decided that one more conversation could be the end. Me and my partner were having some issues in our relationship, so I walked over to the closet, grabbed a big suitcase, and started packing my things. She just stood there with her arms crossed, a smug smile on her face, thinking I was bluffing. Her face changed when I walked past her towards the front door. She said, "You're not really leaving just because I had a fling, are you?" I replied, "No, I'm leaving because you're disrespectful to me. By the way, I spent the night with Brianna and it was amazing. I came back hoping we could work through our problems together, but obviously that's not gonna happen now. I just realized that it's not gonna work out, so don't bother calling me. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk." I left the house without locking the door, and I saw her standing there watching me as I got into the car. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry, so I turned the corner, slowed down, and let the tears flow. I checked into a cheap motel for a week, but before I could even get comfortable, the phone started ringing. I almost ignored it, thinking it was Stephanie, but then I realized it was Chuck. I answered, "Hey Chuck." He replied, "Hello Steven, what's up? What the hell happened?" Stephanie just called Beverly and damn, she was pissed. She was fuming, I almost yelled into the phone. She ditched me for a joke, and when I told her I spent the night with Brian, she just laughed. "Hey, Steve Wilson isn't just some dumb jock, and you gotta admit, you and Brianna are a little hard to believe too." I said, "Damn it, you saw us together, you saw us leave together, no one respects me." "Of course we respect you, Steve, but you and Brianna, come on, be serious. Stephanie and Wilson are pretty close." "Yo, so I don't know what's gonna go down between me and Stephanie, but I think I gotta meet some new people. Peace out, hold up Steve." But I'm already over Stephanie. We chatted for a bit, she even said sorry for the Wilson thing. But the real issue was her not caring about me. Even Brianna calling to confirm our night together didn't change her mind. "Nice try, Steve," she called me a charity case. So I spent another week in the motel, went on a few dates with Brianna. Man, I even teased Brianna about her new secret boyfriend, but she just ignored it. One good thing about being single is that it lets me concentrate on my writing. I sometimes post stories on websites, which Stephanie hates. Brian, on the other hand, always makes sure to read them. I was mad that Stephanie kept hiding my texts without reading them. But turns out, I shouldn't have worried about feeling embarrassed. Rihanna was actually impressed and even gave me some suggestions. Pretty cool, right? That was the final straw, and I decided to file for divorce. Stephanie was shocked. "Are you seriously planning on divorcing me because of my stupid fling with Wilson?" "Actually, yes. The fact that you think my embarrassment is no big deal is exactly why I'm divorcing you. You don't respect me. I'm starting to wonder if you ever did. You don't believe that Brian is interested in me or my stories. You'd probably laugh without even reading them." "Brianna thinks they're pretty good," I said as I walked out the door. Stephanie was having a hard time with the divorce, but I'm done. I don't know why, maybe she didn't want to lose her friends. I tried to help, but they made it worse by laughing about me and Brianna. They said I'd never find someone as hot as Stephanie. The court made us see a counselor, and I went along with it. I didn't do anything stupid like play on my phone during the sessions, but I made it clear I didn't want to marry Stephanie anymore. Stephanie agreed with the counselor. The court recommended that we go ahead with the divorce process. Being a weekend dad was tough, but me and my son made it work. It was easier once Stephanie accepted that the divorce was done. It wasn't too messy, so we were able to live together peacefully. Brianna came to the last court hearing, and seeing Stephanie's face as we left holding hands was priceless. We managed to stay friendly for most of the year, even though we didn't make any promises about lawyers. Banna's got a lot going on. Since I had no set plans and wasn't tied down by a relationship, I had more time to focus on my writing. Brianna, always giving me good advice, recommended that I send my final story to a publisher. I was scared of being rejected, but Brianna ended up getting an offer from a Chicago studio, a big deal. We had one last night together where we skipped dinner to spend as much time as we could together. We didn't have sex, it was more about being close and talking about our feelings. I had some hopes and dreams for the future, but after she fell asleep, I got up and made a few more changes to my story before getting back into bed with her. I loved the feeling of her snuggling up close to me. When I woke up, she was already out of bed, so I went to take a quick shower. As I walked past the laptop table, I was surprised to see it open. I could have sworn I closed it last night. I just shrugged it off and went into the kitchen where Brianna was making breakfast. I came up behind her, gave her a hug, and buried my head. With her nose in my neck, she turned her head and kissed me. "Breakfast is almost ready, want some coffee?" "Your wish is my command," I said with a big bow. I poured the coffee and put the cups on the table. We wasted most of the cooking time just pushing the food around on our plates and looking at each other. Finally, it was time to clean up so I could leave and Brianna could get ready to go. We had already packed most of her stuff in the car and the moving company came to pick up the rest. I grabbed my laptop, hugged and kissed her. Me and Bana said our goodbyes and went our separate ways, promising to stay in touch. I took some time to mourn the end of our relationship before dipping my toes back into the dating scene. I made sure to avoid places where I might run into Stephanie or our old group of friends, and while I did see them every now and then, we never really reconnected. One day, I was sorting through my mail and found a letter from Battles Publishing. I was confused and put it aside as I finished going through the rest of my mail. I took the letter into the kitchen, sat down with a cup of coffee. "Hey, Mr. SMI. We got your manuscript and we're thinking about publishing it. Give me a call ASAP to schedule a meeting. Sincerely, Melanie Wilson, the associate editor." So, I was totally shocked when I found out that someone had seen my work. Brianna must have opened my laptop and shared my file with someone. I didn't know whether to be mad or grateful. On one hand, she had my back, but on the other hand, the publisher is interested in it. My plan was to get back at her without her knowing. I didn't know who she was connected to, but I hoped they wouldn't spill the beans until I was ready. I reached out to Miss Wilson to set up a meeting. We quickly came to an agreement, but I had to wait for the editor to finish their work before celebrating. I was happy to see that the corrections were mostly positive. I swallowed my pride and worked hard on making all the changes she suggested. I had to admit, she was right most of the time. She really listened to me and she was pretty much always right. After 3 tries we were ready to print. I didn't tell Brianna even though we talked a few times since I got the letter. I had a book signing in Chicago and called Brianna to set up a visit. She opened the door and gave me a hug and a kiss. "Steve, I'm so happy to see you again. What brought you to Chicago? Work or fun?" "I hope it's both." I winked and said I could help with the fun part. "One hopes so," she said, winking back as she stepped out of the house. She was shocked to see a limousine. "Wow, things must be going well," she exclaimed. "You could say that," I replied. "This is your city, so why don't you pick the restaurant?" she told the driver, and off we went. Even though we didn't have a reservation, they recognized us right away and seated us. "So, Steve, what brought you to Chicago?" she asked. "It's a surprise," I said, and we enjoyed a delicious meal but skipped dessert. "Let's go to my apartment," she suggested with a flirtatious look. "I have a few things to take care of. So, why don't you come with me first? I don't think you'll be bored." She looked disappointed and confused, but nodded in agreement. The limo pulled up to my hotel, and the driver helped Brian get out. I let her go into the lobby and up the escalator to the second floor where the book signing event was happening. I couldn't stop her from seeing the sign with my photo on it and running into my arms. "Steve, you did it. You did it. I knew you could do it." "Well, I had a little help," I replied with a smile. "I don't know what you're on about, Steve. Don't play humble, Brianna. I never sent in my story, and no one else could have gotten into my laptop. You must be a talented thief. You left your laptop open. I closed it that night. Sheesh. I'm not mad though. I would never have had the guts to share my story. You believed in me more than I believed in myself. I can't thank you enough." "Oh, don't mention it, Steve. I'm just happy to see you doing well." And then, out of the blue, someone from the publishing industry approached me. So, we were told it was time to sign the contract, and I quickly gave Brian a kiss before following the representative to the table they set up for me. I noticed Brianna leaning against the wall, grinning, while a bunch of people were waiting in line to sign their books. Her smile faltered a bit when some women took selfies with me and kissed me on the cheek, but I just smiled, shrugged, and felt relieved when she smiled back. Finally, the signing wrapped up with Brianna giving me a big kiss to make up for all the other kisses we got. How about that? We went back to my place so I could show you around Chicago. As much as I'd love to, my room is upstairs and I already sent the limo driver home. He seemed unsure, but we went up to my room anyway. We spent the night getting reacquainted with each other, then took a nap before ordering breakfast to the room. Steve, where do you want to go now? Can you stick around for a bit? Sorry, I can't. I have a few more stops on my tour before going back to my regular job. I get it, Steve. Let's keep in touch. I really enjoy our time together. We spent a lot of time together, talking, texting, emailing, and making phone calls. When my publisher showed interest in a second book, I dedicated every spare moment to it. As soon as I sent it to the editor, I called Brianna and said, "Hey Steve, it's great to hear your voice again. I have some exciting news, I've written another book." "That's fantastic news," Brianna replied. "When can I read the next great American novel?" I told her it would take time, as I had just presented the first draft. But that's not all. If the book does well, they might offer me a deal. Hey, with this contract for 3 more books, I can finally quit my job and focus on writing full-time. That's amazing, Steve. I always knew you had it in you. Thanks, I owe it all to you. Without your support, I'd still be writing just for fun. Don't sell yourself short, Steve. You've got real talent. It would have come out eventually. Maybe, but there are so many talented folks out there who never get their big break. If you hadn't sent my story out, who knows if I would have had the guts to share it. Me and her had a little disagreement, but deep down she knew I was right. I'm not sure if it was because of my experience with the first book or if I just had more confidence, but the editing went super smooth and the book was ready for printing in no time. I used up most of my vacation time for my first book tour, so I had to take unpaid leave and plan a whole weekend in Chicago. Instead of searching for a hotel, I crashed at Brianna's place for the weekend. I was totally mesmerized by Brianna's stunning body and couldn't figure out why she was. I was so into you, and eventually I just had to blurt it out. "Oh my God, Steve, I love you, but men can be so clueless sometimes." She suddenly went quiet. Neither of us had ever said that L word before. "Seriously, Steve," she continued, "I can get caught up in superficial attraction like anyone else, but lasting love means looking past the surface. Sure, you're attractive, but what makes you special is what's on the inside. Even after what Stephanie did to you, I practically had to beg you to come to bed with me." I guess she was right, and I had no choice. Sorry, Brianna, I don't know what was up with me. Maybe I just don't see my worth, or maybe Stephanie has messed with my self-esteem. But I shouldn't have taken it out on you. It's all good, Steve. I get it. Just keep being the sweet and caring guy you are, and you'll never have to question my love for you. She just said she loves me again, and I didn't say it back. But deep down, I think she knew. I couldn't leave that hanging. "I love you too, Brianna. You know," she said, all silly-like, and then handed me a saucer and gave me a kiss. The rest of the tour went great, and so did the book sales. When I got back home, I asked Brenda to stay over. We visited some old places and people we knew before. Some were shocked that we were still together, while others remembered us from her occasional reporting on the show. I even got some recognition for my books every now and then. We would bump into some people from the old company, but I wasn't interested in showing off my success, both personally and professionally. They seemed pretty angry about it, to be honest. Life's too short to deal with idiots. The first 2 nights were hot and heavy with our love, but I had something special planned for our last night. I took her to the most romantic restaurant in town, where we talked sweet nothings but nothing too exciting. Nah, I didn't pop the question there. I knew we had some serious stuff to talk about and wanted a more private setting. "Hey, Steve, you want to hit the dance floor tonight?" "Actually, I was thinking we could just head straight home tonight if that's cool." "All right, Steve," she said, clearly clueless about what I was thinking. When we got to my place, I took our coats and asked her to have a seat while I grabbed the wine. As we sat down, I handed her a glass and suggested a toast to love and friendship. For love and friendship, I said, and she echoed as we clinked glasses. I sipped the wine, quietly observing Brianna. After she finished her glass, she suddenly stood up, nearly choking on the ring I had slipped into her drink. "Say what?" she mumbled. "Is this what I think it is?" I turned to her, took her hands in mine, and replied, "Yes." "Brianna, I can't even put into words how much my life has turned around since you came into the picture. I can only dream of how amazing it would be if you were by my side forever. Will you marry me, Brianna?" "Steve, you have no idea how badly I want to say yes, but like I've said before, my career is my top priority. If a better opportunity comes along, I'll probably take it. I can't expect you to uproot your life every time I switch jobs." "What do you mean my last book was a hit?" "It was successful enough that a publisher offered me a 3-book deal. Got a fat enough check to quit my job and write full-time. I handed in my resignation, and as soon as my lease is up, I'm moving to Chicago. If you're cool with it, I want us to be together." She just sat there with her eyes wide and mouth hanging open, then she jumped into my arms. Yes, I'll marry you." We had a small wedding. My parents flew in with my son Danny and Brian. His parents were there with her sister. We spent Saturday with my family, hitting up as many places as we could in one day. Brianna used her old-school magic to give us a sunny day for our lakeside wedding. After some emotional goodbyes filled with happiness, we headed to Barbados for our honeymoon. It'd be nice to say we lived happily ever after, and for the most part, we did. But our busy careers and big egos, including my own, led to some petty jealousy. We made a pact to always communicate and work through any issues, which helped smooth out the rough patches. Luckily, there was only one hiccup in Brianna's career. Moving to NYC for the Today Show wasn't a big deal for Steve, since he could write from anywhere. We had been living in the city for about a year when Brianna dropped the bombshell that she was pregnant. I didn't even know she had stopped taking birth control, but I was over the moon and couldn't wait to be a full-time dad again. I adore Dana, and it's tough saying goodbye when the weekend is over. It was kinda crazy having the entire country following our pregnancy, but we got used to it. She eventually gave birth. So, my baby girl Brittany is just adorable, and she definitely got her looks from her mama. As soon as she was born, everyone was asking for photos and videos. I had just wrapped up a book tour for my 5th book, and the publisher wanted me to sign a new contract. I wasn't really feeling inspired for a new topic, but I promised them first dibs if I came up with something. In the meantime, I was still making bank from book royalties and some movie deals. And let's not forget, Rihanna was raking in the dough too. So, I was happily coasting along in my success. New role as Mr. Mom. If you ever asked me if I was happy that my wife cheated on me, I would ask if you were crazy. But here and now, I am happier than I ever could have imagined. Thank you for taking the time to hear today's story. If you enjoyed this essay, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your or someone else's situation, please don't hesitate to contact me. Take care.